Welcome to Ruminations. I'm your host, Bobby Gill. In today's episode, we're heading to the rolling hills of Somerset, England, to a place where sheep graze in tight knit flocks, wool is measured in microns, and regeneration is more than a philosophy, it is a way of life. We're talking about Fernhill Farm. We get into how holistic management transformed their approach to grazing and land stewardship, what it takes to breed sheep that thrive on rough terrain and produce premium wool, and how two people can turn a hilltop farm into a cultural and ecological hub, complete with shearing competitions, festivals, innovative new sheep breeds, and a whole lot more. Our guests today to discuss all of this are none other than Jen Hunter and Andy Weir, shepherds, entrepreneurs, educators, and as recognized by Farmers Weekly, the 2022 Sheep Farmers of the Year. Andy manages the sheep and the land, while Jen manages the wool and runs the farm shop. Together, they've created a truly holistic enterprise that's as much about community and creativity as it is about sheep. From breeding crosses between 6 distinct wool breeds to partnering with luxury clothing brands, they've built a model of what's possible when you weave together ecology, economy, and artistry. So, with that, let's now dive into today's conversation with Jen Hunter and Andy Weir of Fernhill Farm and Fernhill Fiber. Well, hello, Jen and Andy. Welcome to the Ruminations podcast.
Hello.
Hi there.
You guys have, it sounds like you've had a fairly busy morning and maybe even a busy couple of weeks here. You're just coming off of a big event, I hear.
Yeah, we hosted Fiber Experience, which is a farm open day, which comes kind of at the end of shearing 1200 inland ewes, where we gather lots of what we call our wool harvesting team from mostly all over Europe, but kind of global. And so we sort of look after about 50 people for a week, and we all get the wool off properly, grade it, sort it, and then invite the public to come and see how it should or could be done. So yeah, it's quite busy.
Yeah. What does the attendance look like for that? You said about 50 folks that are involved in the actual shearing, but then the public is attended. How big is this event?
Well, we didn't count the cars, but we think there might have been 300 cars throughout the day. And so, yeah, somewhere sort of upwards of 500 people come sort of throughout the day. There's a series of walks and talks, discussions, films. There's a few traders also selling natural fiber products. There's demonstrations. You can even learn to shear a sheep and learn how to be a sort of wool handler. So there's lots of things to do to entertain you. And obviously we like to feed people with good quality farm foods as well. So yeah, it's a proper day out on the farm.
My God, that is that's the scale of an event that you don't normally see at farms. You know, normally you hear, oh, we're having a farm day. And yeah, we had 30 people come out. It was a massive success. You're talking about an entirely different scale here. Where did this event come from? How did you come up with it?
It's been growing for quite a few years, the actual fiber experience. We started off with a blade shearing tournament, and that built from just a requirement to shear sheep and to try and market the wool a lot better. So we saw a bit of public awareness, kind of like a gathering of the clan of blade shearers and wool harvesters. Had an eclectic mix of shearers who I'd met over the years, and there's no real numbers of sheep to be shorn on a farm with blades, the old traditional style hand shears. Mm-hmm. So we thought, well, we got 1,200. I didn't want to be selfish and shear them all myself. So we thought we'd share the fun occasion, and we're probably one of the bigger events in the Northern Hemisphere for blade shearing.
Wow, incredible. So I'm going to summarize the answer to where did this event come from is, well, I was going to say laziness, but maybe efficiency is the term of being able to get all of these 1,200 sheep blade sheared. That seems certainly like a benefit. What about for attendees? What are attendees getting out of this? Like, what kind of folks from the public come out to this event?
All sorts of people, families, those who have heard about us but never actually come down the farm drive. A lot of local people, but also people travel out from Bristol, our nearest town, about 20 miles away, just for a day out in the countryside. And then people travel further who know about us or other people who are attending the day, giving talks or selling product, and they want to have a catch up with them.
Wow. Sounds like quite the event, and one that I will say I will try to get to next year. So I will put it on my calendar and see if you can hold me to that.
Okay, so it's our 10-year anniversary next year.
Is it really?
It is, and it is the 21st of March, 2026, which is the spring equinox here. So lots of good reasons to come.
Amazing. Okay. Well, what we'll do is for our listeners and viewers, we'll put a link to the event in our show notes. And I'm guessing you don't have registration for whatever is, all the details for next year's event out on the website yet, but we'll put whatever you have into the show notes so folks can go and make sure that they get it on their calendars because, 10 years, I mean, the scale of this event is already pretty massive. Do you have anything in store for the 10-year anniversary? Something special?
We're just currently getting over what we've just done in the last 10 days. And we do get partial funding because we are in an area of outstanding natural beauty, reformed as natural landscape. So we do try and seek a bit of funding, which covers the specialist speakers that come here. It's kind of coming to an end that's over here in England. So we're trying to reformat how we can continue to grow this event based on we want it to be accessible to everybody. So we don't charge any entrance fees. The only money that exchanges hands is if you're paying someone for sort of specialist tuition, or if you're buying some quality farm, lunch or afternoon tea or something. So yeah, we wanted to keep it really sort of free to everyone. That's our goal. So we got to work on that yet.
Wow. I didn't realize it was a free event. That just, I think, elevates it in terms of what it is that you're putting out there. That's incredible. Well, I know we jumped right into what you guys just went through over the past week, but why don't we rewind a little bit and set the stage for folks and give an introduction to Fernhill Farm. You guys actually are the first guests that I've interviewed here on Ruminations that I have not yet had the pleasure of meeting before. So this is our first time meeting. So this conversation is just as much for me as it is for the listeners in terms of meeting you guys and learning about everything that you have going on. So tell us about Fernhill Farm. Where are you guys located? Give us a history of the land. Paint us the picture of everything that's going on.
Fernhill Farm, we're in Somerset, which is the southwest of England. We're on a latitude similar to London, so I think we're just above the equivalent of Boston in the USA.
Okay.
But we don't get extreme weather like you guys do, I don't think. We may get a little bit of snow. It may have a few frosty days through the winter. We get to maybe 30 degrees in the summer. So quite temperate. We're highly influenced by the weather you send over here. Send me a fortnight later. It's a little bit milder where we live. We're 800 foot up on the top of a plateau. So we can't really see any views. We're just on the top of the hill. A lot of sky. We're on limestone, which is a clay loam. And we are all a grassland farm. We love it. We're 20 miles out of town, but we have our own little bit of remoteness. We graze cattle and sheep, and we've got a few pigs. And that's all kind of evolved over time. I moved here 27 years ago. Prior to that, I was a contract shepherd, bit of a nomadic shepherd, renting land wherever I could, shearing sheep, lambing sheep, working with them. But not only in the UK, traveling Australia, New Zealand, lots of countries in Europe, and all the way around the UK, up into Scotland and in Wales. Come from a farming background. So it's kind of like in here. I've got wool on the brain, in the genetics. Parents were farming, grandparents were farming. But I've kind of gone out Due to necessity, we only had a very small family farm where I was brought up. What wise words from my dad when I was younger, when I finished college. I said, so what are we going to do? He said, what are you going to do? And that set me on my way. Just get on and do something that you want to do. That was sheep shearing. Did about 15 years, shearing all over the place, earning money, learning how other people farm, and learning that there is not one correct way. You sort of work with the nature that is around you, your soil type, your climate, your local population. So it was a very good education. And unfortunately for myself, I met out with Jen about 20 years ago at Fernhill farm. And it really put like a reason and a policy together to really push on. I'll pass you over to Jen now. She's got her side of the story.
Yeah, let's hear it. I'd love to.
Thank you, Andy. So I'm also a farmer's daughter, kind of half Lancashire, half Yorkshire. So if anyone knows anything about the War of the Roses, I'm a pink rose. So I had an interesting sort of background growing up on the borders in the north of England. So I'm an imposter down here in the south of England, but I'm not sure I'd be welcome back up north either now. So, but all farmers, I grew up, on a dairy farm. We had beef and sheep and grew our own vegetables. We kind of, had our own poultry, our own goats. So subsistence and the ability to use all your natural resources on the farm was just embedded in my everyday, let's work every hour that the sun's out mentality. I have a degree in animal science. I studied animal behavior. It's something that is really crucial to me, which sort of determines their health and welfare. And I've kind of always run with that as my mantra, if you like. Mm-hmm. So I've written best practice guides for outdoor pig production. I ended up in Uganda as a VSO, which is volunteer service overseas. So I was based in Uganda as a livestock advisor and kind of felt quite happy in Africa in my little mud hut. I don't need, too many sort of shiny things in my life. Sort of came back to the UK, looked at organic certification, and I'm not meant to sit still in an office, really. I'm sort of built for stronger, sort of more endurance, if you like, and was getting into teaching and education so I could return to Africa to do more of what I'd set my goals on. And I needed a sheep shearing machine, and here's my machine.
And then a tractor.
So, we kind of bumped into each other by accident and realized that we actually come from a very similar background of livestock on land, living, really, really natural lives. They have all the ability to live in their surrounding environments. We just need to put it in front of them rather than bringing them in and, changing what the landscape looks like on the outside to put the animals inside. And, there was very few people who actually thought the same as us too. And so, we were little odd odds together, which is fine. Fast forward to Fernhill, and what Andy didn't tell you is that it's a really, really old farmstead, if you like. The buildings that are here are sort of Grade 2 listed, date from around 1770, but there's lots of evidence. Well, let's just say Cheddar Caves is 5 miles away, and that's the oldest skeleton in England. So people have been coming out of the caves to exactly where we are to live quite similar lives to hopefully what we're still doing. So there's a lot of history here.
Wow.
And, we see ourselves as kind of custodians of this landscape. And that means we let livestock do the maintenance, keep the carbon cycle, flowing naturally. So, we kind of needed humans in our existence to pay for the renovation of all the buildings. And I used to joke, I don't know how you marry a shepherd and become a wedding planner, because we ended up hosting many weddings here, and it sort of broke me a little bit, the expectations of being a farmer, a mum, and, a wedding planner, and turning a sort of redundant, fairly old, you know, farmstead into a wedding venue, which wasn't up to everyone's expectations. And so I was like, okay, I need to change the face of the person that comes down the drive, in that we wanted people that were more sort of wholesome, holistic. And at that time, Andy was really getting into blade shearing, and I wanted to try and sell product to all our visitors. And there was nobody to help me add value to wool. It was, 20 years ago, wool was the forgotten fibre. There was nobody really to help. And that's where I looked upon Nuffield Farming to ask for help, and they gave me a scholarship. So I was very fortunate that that's how I came across holistic management. So, yeah.
Wow. Okay, I want to get into the Nuffield Farm scholarship for wool and how you guys got into holistic management, and also some pieces of Africa. But I want to make sure we don't lose it. So 27 years ago, Andy, you came to the farm after living a more nomadic shepherd lifestyle. What was the management on that land before you got there? How was that land tended prior to you taking over?
I would say its history has been very changeable or exploitative, to the point we can take it back 2,000 years, in that there was open cast mining going on right on this farm, lead mining, silver, and there are ancient Celts who were dealing with the Romans. AD 56, there was a Roman garrison up on the Mendits, further exploitation of the lead. So the landscape was fairly turned over. Then there was a lot of tree planting that carried out through the early part at the kind of last millennia. And then we get to the Land Enclosures Acts of about the 1500s and the 1700s. And it was big open common land, all grazed by sheep. The monks of Witton Friary ran about 100,000 sheep over the Mendits and down through the valleys, down south of Bath and Glastonbury. And then when we got here, the early 50s, the land was farmed by a family who lost their father. There were 6 children. So it was, again, just set stock, very little inputs. When we got here, there was gorse, ragwort, bracken, stinger nettle, thistle, no gates, no water troughs, hedges eroded, house was falling down, buildings falling down. And I thought, perfect. I can't make it any worse. And at the time, obviously, any young person getting into farming, there's a huge capital requirement and investment. And any farm that would have been in better condition, I just wouldn't have been able to afford to move on to it. So the plan was to fence it, to get water to all the paddocks. And to assist with that, as Jen mentioned, we've always invited public onto the farm. Within about 3 years, we held an event on the farm that had 20,000 people come to it. And that really opened my eyes up to the diversity of people, their passions, their genuineness, that they want to get in touch with reality. It was, I guess, a bit hedonistic in that people were all living a dream. But a lot of those people nowadays, 25 years on, are into big business wind turbines, are inventors of new kind of green efficient systems. It was where I first heard about permaculture and the effectiveness of grazing and plants and herbal medicine. And it was a real eye-opener. Had to carry on shepherding and making a living. A lot of the grazing we took was out on other farms. And we were running about 6,000 sheep then. And it was kind of noted by myself and other farmers that when we were grazing, it was all electric fence on other people's farms, just so we had a control of the stock. And we would move field by field round there farms, maybe 400 sheep on each farm. And they would have to stay in paddocks for like 2, 3, 4 days because of the size of the fields. And at the end of the winter, the farmer would regularly come out and say, or different farmers would say, have you grazed those fields? And I said, yeah, I grazed them back in October, November time. Oh, there's more grass there than when we started the winter. And it just set a little ball rolling in my head going, if we graze like this all the time, my stock are happy because they're always on green feed. The farmer's happy because he's got green feed left when I leave the farm. And everything is neat and tidy. And we move into spring back on our home pastures and we carry on that rotational grazing. When the system broke down, I had to go set stocking. You can notice the deterioration in the well-being of the animal, but you don't really quickly add 2 and 2 together. But then we had to worm more, we had more disease issues. And so since then, we've tried to use Fernhill as our key farmer practice, moth grazing, and the stock are happy, reducing the amount of hours sat on a tractor. I'm happy, don't like tractor driving, like wandering amongst the sheep with my dogs. And it was the conclusion when we did holistic management training, when we visited some other regen places, we just thought, well, that's what we're doing. So we kind of practiced a lot of good principle farming for many years. And it's quite rewarding now that there's a name for it. We've had training for it, and it's really opened our eyes and given us courage to move forward even more. So a lot of things we've done over the course of the time can be explained by holistic management or a regenerative approach. And yeah, it makes you braver to have more impact on other landlords, be a little bit more pushy when you're driving a deal and trying to get some long-term agreements with other farmers.
It's interesting that you're saying that when you discovered holistic management, when you went through the official training with 3LM, I think you took training with, right? The Savory Hub in the UK. That was back in 2017. Is that right? Okay. So back then, when you were you're going through holistic management for the first time and you're like, oh, this is kind of what we're doing already, but it's giving a name to it and maybe providing a little more structure around it versus things that you were doing intuitively. Would that be accurate to say? And I guess I'm wondering where that intuitive approach to your land management came from. And I'm wondering if all those years as a shepherd, because there's folks that come to holistic management from a very conventional agricultural background, where it's just set stock. That is all that they know. That's all that they've ever done. But you were fairly nomadic. You were on the land with the sheep, spending time reading the land, reading the health of the animals, having that more intimate relationship with place and with the animals. Do you think that's why holistic management came easily to you?
Definitely, yeah. There was a government-supported scheme in the UK back in the 80s, late 80s, 90s, called Set Aside, because there was a grain mountain and overproduction because of EU subsidies. Basically, it encouraged farmers to go the wrong way too intensively. There was land set aside, generally after cropping, generally on second-rate land. The farmer would get half the rate, but he could graze it with livestock. So I picked up a lot of grazing in that format. And again, because I had a limited amount of electric fencing, I would just mob graze around the farm, hoping not to return within 30 days. And we would gear that accordingly, sell stock, buy stock. It's a very fluid thing. It's the actual stock numbers we carry on the farm. A lot of these contracts I had on the set aside land was for 5 years. By the time I got to year 5, that I could see it happening on an annual basis, the diversity of plants that actually naturally came back from the soil, because I didn't have enough money to actually seed any of the land myself. If I could get landlords encouraged, they would put in some seed, but it was genuinely a very narrow spectrum of plants, maybe ryegrass and clover. But we were noting by year 5 that we had a diversity of clovers in there. We would have cockspurs and timothy and fescues and the perennial grasses that are very natural to our landscape anyway. And they came back strong. We'd eliminated a lot of the weed species, the thistle, the stinging nettle and dot, because the grazing that we were practicing encouraged the grass growth and knocked the weed species out. And landlords were then wanting to keep me on to graze the land, but were trying to push the rent right back up to what it would be comparable to what you would get for cropping. But they were comparing what they would get for cropping by using the sums, including fertilizers, spray, big machinery. A lot of them went back that way and then wondered why their soil was deteriorating again. Their crops were failing or falling down in production. And the couple of fields that I stayed on grazing were just getting more fertile and more productive, to the in fact that I was grazing the same number of sheep on half the acreage, to the confusing comments from the landowners themselves. So it was a learning as we were moving and progressing the flock of sheep that really showed me that the ruminant can help soil to recover, and plants are naturally there. The seed bank in soil is incredible. As farmers, conventional farmers, we don't give it chance.
Yeah. So it sounds like a lot of things were working well for you. I mean, within 3 years of farming, you have an event of such a massive scale. How many people did you say were at that event?
20,000.
20,000. I'm having a hard time even conceptualizing what that looks like on a farm or how you're able to pull that off.
It was a big surprise to me too.
Well, it was already a gathering. We just hosted it on this land as such because it was an income generation project for us. Mm-hmm. And I suppose what we compare it to is we farm people as a cash crop, opposed to plowing up the land and growing some lupins or potatoes or this other crazy idea that someone thinks they're just going to start growing. So we have grown an events business with people on the land because they're generally kind of on the soil, generally.
So with everything going relatively well, and you're talking about perennials coming back, changes in species composition, what was it that drew you to holistic management in the first place? We often hear from folks that they arrive to holistic management usually from a point of desperation, that like, oh, I'm about to lose the farm, something's got to change. It sounds like things were going relatively well. So what was the draw?
I needed to change weddings for wool as an enterprise on the farm. That was my desperation.
Okay, it was getting out of the events business, which I used to do. I understand.
A particular type of person who didn't understand, where me and Andy were coming from, and didn't understand the constraints that we were under because it was their special day, or the guests that they were bringing were just too demanding as such. So. And it was going back to the Nuffield scholarship. I ended up in Patagonia and met some people through Ovis 21. And I was trying to get in. I stayed on their farm and I was trying to get over the border into Argentina, and they just shut the borders overnight. So I found myself in Patagonia some extra days, and that's where I really sort of had time to look at what these multi-purpose merinos were actually, doing on the land. And that's where I realized they were mob grazed, and they were putting as much focus into the wool returns as they was to the meat quality. And that's where I came back to Andy and I said that this is what they're doing. And I think we're already, we're trying to aim for the same objectives here. And that's where I contacted 3LM back here in 2015, I think, it was still forming at the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how I came across holistic management, which was in Patagonia.
Wow.
So yeah.
That's the pieces are all coming together now. That makes a lot of sense. So Ovis 21, for folks listening, that's the Savory hub in Argentina. They're one of the oldest hubs in the Savory network, and also one of the most productive in terms of just the sheer volume of land that they've influenced and people that they've trained over the years. Just massive influence all throughout Latin America, led by Pablo Borelli and team out there. Okay, so you were exposed to holistic management through the folks at Ovis 21. You came back to the UK. You got in contact with 3LM. What was it like going through holistic management training? Was there anything that surprised you, or key lessons that you took away from going through that initial training that differed from what you were already doing pretty well?
I find it quite challenging, in as much they didn't exactly give you answers, more go out and have another look.
Yep.
Really look and be part of what you're looking at.
Yeah, you're not going to get a consultation. It's going to be more coaching and making you learn it yourself.
And that was good. And what it taught me, and where it kind of helped, as you kind of heard, there's lots of bits of our puzzle so far, and I think we could start seeing that they're beginning to join up. Mm-hmm. But we still felt there was big gaps, or things haven't been pulled together. And what the holistic training with the financial side, it showed us, it gave us confidence in what we were doing, but also gave us guidance on how to plan moving forward. It gave us courage to be more exacting with our mob grazing. I still find it a great challenge to do all of the planned grazing charts, in as much that it's in there, but I know that's not the right place for it to stay. I've got to get it down on paper. I need an apprentice to work with me.
Well, I think in Andy's fairness, he has 30 flocks of sheep at any one time. So to put that into one piece of paper is not going to happen. And we don't own probably 80% of the land that we graze. So that's the sort of planned grazing charts are really complex for our system. So Andy has it all written down in his diary, and he's been doing it like that for 40 years. So it's not that there isn't a traceable sort of record. It just doesn't fit into one chart.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen folks who will take multiple different charts, and they have, their wall is covered from floor to ceiling with, one large, massive chart. But I hear you that the amount of legwork that's needed to get that all set up could certainly be burdensome. Have you explored any of the digital tools for grazing planning at all, in terms of simplifying that process?
I've got one I'm trying to work with. I'm more the block than the IT part. There's a little business in the UK called Field Margin, and you can plan out charts on all it's like a map, and you can put your fields on that map, and then you can plan out days. It'll give you alerts. You can record days grazing in each field. So it's very comparable to my diary, in that I can look back and say, well, that lot gave me enough kilograms dry matter to carry the equivalent stock which I needed for maybe 3 months. And then I can break it down. And I quite often will look at a fresh block of land, measure it, look at the contours, and go, well, that'll carry, who doing what I consider very simple sums, that carry 200 head of stock for 2 weeks or half a year. It depends on what the landlord requires, and we adjust accordingly. But we always try and farm anybody's land to a holistic planned grazing method in as tight and mob grazing as we can get.
Mm-hmm.
As everyone will appreciate, it all takes time. So then you have to run your own well-being balance going, I can't lose 30 lots of fencing every day. So I'll give them 2 days on each spread. That halves the workload. Then you've got to incorporate apprentices to show them how to do the electric fencing. And when they get that, that's great. I don't have to do it. You pass that job on. And that's where we're always trying to be in sharing the knowledge, sharing the reasoning why we're doing things. And I think most people get it, whether they come from a farming background or not, college trained or not. They come to the farm and we explain the reasoning why we're doing something. It's like explaining, would you prefer your plate of food to change every day, or do you want the same plate of food every day, every meal? You want a clean plate to go with that. And most people go, well, yes. I go, well, let's move the sheep or the cattle to a clean plate of food. And I go, do they look happy? They look really happy. So it's very simple, and it ties back into, again, with her degree, kind of the way animals behave naturally. If you spend the time to watch them, will tell you that there is something good or there's something bad. And I'm still learning to have the wiseness to actually pick up on those very minute kind of signals they give to you and give to each other. And it's beautiful to be part of it. Quite challenging. Good to be part of it, though.
This episode is brought to you by Savory's growing community of regenerating members, listeners like you who care about real solutions for our global grasslands. Over the past decade, the Savory Institute has helped restore more than 100 million acres through holistic planned grazing, creating productive and resilient landscapes where fertile soils lead to healthy food and thriving communities. But this kind of impact is only possible with support from people like you. For just $10 a month, less than the cost of lunch, your support can help restore nearly 400 acres of land every single year. And as a regenerating member, you'll join our global community of over 600 like-minded people committed to making real change where it matters the most. You'll get access to Savory's private online network, a free holistic management online course, discounts from partner brands, and even opportunities to connect with Alan Savory. Signing up is fast, easy, and it makes a real impact. Just visit savory.global/member, that's savory.global/MEMBER, and start making an impact today. You were saying that the financial planning aspect of holistic management was the piece that stood out to you specifically. And so I'm curious if that led to anything changing in your operation or how your enterprises are set up. What changed as a result of going through that holistic management training?
I think what we find really useful is the 7 context checks, because we do have some quite hefty decisions to make here that are actually not really part of the farming enterprise. So we kind of have the livestock, we have the wool enterprise, and we have what we call our events enterprise. We have accommodation for sort of 40 people here. So we have a lot of, decisions to make that surround this whole farm as a base. And there's times where we try and work out what the sort of logjam is in the 7 context checks. We can run the decisions through that, and it has helped. And, it gives us something to come back to when you sort of, you're so focused in the now, you forget the bigger picture. And I think that's the same with how we have sort of changed our viewpoint when it comes to holistic financial planning. Is it's all part of the same jigsaw, and it's not about the profit at the end of it. Certainly with my wool enterprise, It's the longevity of the sheep, the longevity of the wool product, the longevity of having the same customers come back time and time again because they really value what we have done to say, you know, our land is regenerating. We're going to share this information with you. So it just changes the emphasis to, you know, from that pound sign at the end of the year into, you know, all the sort of reasons as to why.
We've got a project. We've got lots of projects to rebuild old buildings on the farm,
Hmm.
and they all need a huge cash input. I don't want to get in too much debt to the bank. Um, and I've noticed with a lot of kind of commercial enterprises, lots of their money they're earning, they're paying other big businesses for inputs into their business. And I've never really liked that. I never felt safe with it. So we're in the starting blocks of rebuilding a very old house on the farm. It was the neighbours. All the roof timbers all the timbers in the house have rotted out. So over the last few years, we've been harvesting trees from off of our own farm. And we've got a wood mill in to cut it all up. And then we're going to put the roof back on, insulated the house with wool, and put the floors in. So we've got another habitable house on the farm. And I've tried to break it down into the roof. Cutting the timber will cost £10,000. Putting the roof back on would cost £20,000. Putting the floors in, another £10,000. Getting all the wall prepped, insulated, and boarding on the outside, another £10,000. So I break the project down, lots more parts to it as well. I think we need plumbing and electrics and things like that. But I break it all down going, well, that'll be 100 sheep. That will be 10 cows. That will be another 100 sheep. So the last 10 years, we've built stock numbers up.
Hmm.
Hopefully, we've been waiting for the trade to rise as well. And now we're going to reduce numbers, capitalize, transfer part of the business into another type of our business.
Mm.
But it's all based on livestock.
So this is something you've been planning for a number of years. So this is part of your land plan, essentially, that you've been working towards and incrementally um, building up animal numbers to get to that point. That's fascinating. Well, congratulations on reaching that point and having everything going
We
there.
just got to do it now.
Oh, it's not done yet. Oh, okay. I
And
thought
yeah,
you were saying it was like underway and you've
got
got
it.
apprentices that are building.
Yeah, we've got the timber cut
Okay.
and we've got the scaffolding up around the house.
Well, I wish you an expedient process in finishing that project because I know how, uh, in terms of construction projects, and with building anything new, they often say it takes twice as long and costs twice as much. So I hope that's not the case, but it sounds like you've been very detailed in.
Out of the window here, I can see calves bouncing around. In a month's time, we are lambing. So there's another generation of calves coming into the business.
Hmm.
And it's about using, you know, resources that are from this landscape rather than importing timbers from a builder's merchant because we don't need to do that. We're able to grow our own sort of building materials and our food and our fibre. We also grow our own fuel to run the heating system, which is, you know, a log boiler, and we capture the sun, which, you know, heats the buildings. It's about looking at lands, you know, holistically.
Hmm.
And, you know, we're very fortunate that we have a small farm where we can harvest all of those materials and replenish them just as quickly as they deplete. So I think that's for us is where our mindset fits really well when we came across holistic management is we're kind of people of the land, if you like.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, you're using wool insulation in your walls. You're selling wool in terms of clothing, garments, the food you eat, the timber that you're producing. You know, bringing community in for some of those labor pieces so that it's a shared symbiotic, mutualistic experience between, yourselves, the animals, and the community. There seems to be so much uh, coming through about your connection to the land and how you are not using the land, but I don't know. I like to think of it as in relationship with the land. Feels like a more appropriate way to view it. But it seems like you guys are tackling it from a lot of different angles.
I think there are lots of different angles when you look at nature that with prayer you can harvest a little bit off of a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes with an understanding, which I was very lucky when I was a very young shepherd with my family. We used to go to agricultural shows, and I used to be farmed out with other livestock farmers, go and help them, lead that cow, help them with that sheep.
Mm-hmm.
And I met so many natural farmers. Some would have been born in the 1800s, so they were very old shepherds when I met them. Never used any chemicals. Always were very quiet around the stock and would know them all and would watch them all. They had the time to do that. And they were still shepherds of the day that would fold their sheep across the hill. And we're just doing what they'd done. And they would tell me about their grandfathers who were shepherds just out on the hill with a dog, with a stick, working for the governor who owned the big house down in the valley somewhere. But they were so happy with and content with their relationship with nature and with the animal that would produce a product. And they were very, very proud of that. And it's enabled us to accept that you don't have to work in a city. You don't have to earn X amount, drive the flash car, have the very glitzy life to actually get a genuine reward from our visit on planet Earth. We're here for a very short time.
With all your years of shepherding, I think you probably have a very fine-tuned skill set in terms of reading the land and the animals. And so I'm curious, when you're out, walking a paddock right now, what is it that you're looking for? What are you observing? What are the things that stand out to you or that you're trying to observe? And how does that then affect your management decisions?
The scale of it, the location and its surroundings. In fact, they will have upon what you are trying to achieve on that piece of land. I will walk across it and feel with your feet how it is, how soft it is. You'll notice just on wandering across it, the diversity of plants and its general healthiness, whether there's density to the sward. I think you can feel it. After wandering over lots of paddocks, lots of areas of land, you can feel how healthy it is. We've gone on to arable lands where it's lots of cultivation, and they were putting a cover crop for us, turnips, brassicas, and you graze it, and it's a prolific crop, but there's a lack of diversity. There's a hardness to the ground. Maybe I will look into the soil, look at the worm cast, how much soil is exposed. And it is a huge variation. But it all bases back to the policy of that landowner. And where we're trying to get to with our farming businesses, we have a lot more control over an extended period on that soil, because you think you've got it just about right after 4 or 5 years, landlords changes their approach to what they own. Then they're generally looking for more money.
Mm-hmm.
We were Soil Farmer of the Year finalists last year, and I joked, so I'm like, well, we never even see our soil.
Because it's so well covered.
Well, that's it. That
Yeah.
you know, that's what I notice most of all when I walk across other landscapes is the amount of bare patches
Mm-hmm.
and the sort of hardness, the cracking. The sort of. I look at soil when I see it because we don't see it. And when I'm in a paddock with the livestock, I generally use all my senses. I try not to take any machinery there, even though you have to if it's winter feeding time. But my favourite approach is, to sort of listen before they even notice that I'm listening, because they'll tell you a lot of what's going on, in their own community. Because we try and run the animals as a community. So our herders, cows, they're all born and bred on this farm. They are a family, and changing anything within that herd has its effects. And so we're always monitoring animal behaviour based on what we have to do, and the natural environment in which it's, what it's giving to them. Obviously, we're coming out of quite an easy winter, feeling less beaten up than we have done by this time by many winters in the past. But it was what's called the hungry gap this time of year, in that we're just at the end of winter, and because of the height of this farm, we're not quite bursting with all the fresh grass that you might see sort of, if you were at sea level, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there's still quite a lot of demands on the animals, and so you need to make sure that what we're putting in front of them is sort of meeting all their nutritional targets. So, yeah, lots going on whenever we walk the paddocks.
Yeah. So you're monitoring for a variety of things, and with so many years of experience, I think a lot of this is just intuitive and automatic. It's kind of like when you're out walking the land with Alan Savory. He'll be 10 steps ahead of you in terms of the things that he's observing, and you kind of need to reel him back sometimes. Be like, no. Yeah, I see that you're onto something right there, but I need you to walk me through that process of how you actually got to that observation, because I'm trying to keep up and train my eyes for what it is that you're seeing from your decades of experience. So it sounds like you're kind of in that advanced stage of observation based on the decades that you're bringing to this. And so I'm wondering, for those maybe that are newer to farming, are there any tips or tricks or specific things, like a certain cue that you see in terms of animal behavior that lets you know, oh, they're not happy, or oh, they need to move? Or are there any specific things that stand out to you as key indicators that there needs to be
I
something
think I think ruminants like an afternoon nap as well. They like a siesta.
Mhm.
Sometimes, or many times, we go out and sort of that time, so 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and all the herds or all the sheep will be sat together ruminating. For us, that indicates that they've had their fill and that their body is resting. They're not searching around looking for something else that they haven't had yet that day, and they can just ruminate. And they have a little snooze in the afternoon. And sometimes, as an example, you might not see that in a dairy herd,
Mhm.
because they're always, they have a much higher sort of turnaround of nutrient requirements. And so for me, I just like to see them having a little afternoon nap in the field.
It's their well-being. You've got to be able to look at your animals and understand all their ear twitches, tail twitching,
Mm.
their own social behavior in their group, the noise they're making. If they're making a lot of noise, especially sheep, they're generally getting out. If it's cattle, they'll talk to you. Um, they'll let you know if, for some reason, the water trought's broken. They'll let you know if they think they want to get another move. You'll notice quite regularly when you turn or stop into a fresh paddock. In the UK, we have a lot of hedgerows, and they'll go straight to the hedgerow. And it will indicate that maybe they're missing or low in some sort of mineral. But what we found over the course of the years while I was doing practicing the paddock grazing, where they're getting fresh feed and a more diverse length of sward, they seem to be more content. Their gut feel is more balanced. So they're generally more content. And if they're content, they've got generally good growth gain. They're producing good milk, producing good fiber, and they're a pleasure to look after. And that's where we're always trying to get to, is that if we're getting it right, it's a pleasure. It takes all the stress out of so much.
How
Especially, or you stood on the side of them on a paddock with a busy road, all those vehicles rushing up and down, and he goes, I haven't got any of that stress.
often? How do you balance the ecological needs of the landscape with the nutritional requirements for the animals, and also, I guess, looking at the quality of the wool and the factors that might influence that? How do you balance all those different pieces at the same time?
I suppose what people often don't understand, and I'm not saying it's farmers, I'm saying it's the human population, is what we need our nutrients for. Obviously, we have maintenance, which is what we all need to, live and breathe every day. You might have maintenance and growth if you are a young animal. You might have maintenance, growth, and then you might have pregnancy. In the state of a cow as well, you could have maintenance, growth, pregnancy, and lactation, or drop the growth, and you might have maintenance, sort of pregnancy and lactation. And so, by understanding what the animal actually needs each day, just to sort of fulfill all of those requirements, what Andy doesn't, he's very modest about his ability to sort of walk a pasture and calculate. And obviously it's something that we have done with holistic management, and that's reframed it into a different sort of plan, action, control, monitor is Andy's mantra. And so we do use that, but he does it very quickly in his 40 years of experience. And it is literally, you work out how many animals you have, you work out what their requirements are, and then you plan accordingly to how often you can move those animals. You can't move them every day. Give them, a 48 hour. If you can't move, you can only move them once a week. Well, then plan it for that. So it's the ability to understand forage, and you won't get it right every day, because if the weather changes and suddenly you get 3 inches of rain, then, it's about planning ahead so that there is a paddock that you can just move them into straight away, just to take them out of that sort of scenario. Yeah, we're not right.
It's trying not to get yourself in a corner. Have a reserve plan up your sleeve. It may be 2-3 summers ago, it was plus 30 degrees, which is very hot for this area. We're fortunate we got some woodland. We just opened the woodland gates up and let the stock in there so they could have shelter. And they came out of there so happy. They're foraging in their own time, but it's trying to have the ability to always have forage in front. Where we were maybe 10 years ago, we were probably overstocked on some places, so we have to keep moving on to leave any residues behind. And where we took it too tight, we noticed that the regrowth was a lot longer. So we're refining the ability to understand grass growth in whichever season it is. So we leave enough residue, give enough rest that you've got a good sward to move back into when you come back after your 30 days minimum, up to 50, 90 days, depending on the productivity of that field and the landscape it's on, and your landlord requirements on some of the farms we're renting. So it's I guess it's just that ability to take all factors on and make a decision and move on. And note if you've made a mistake and try not to do it again.
You guys are processing a lot of different information, both qualitative and quantitative. And it sounds like a lot of it is stored up in Andy's head and also in his diary. But I'm curious, do you do any formal ecological monitoring on your land, either through EOV, which is Savory's land monitoring protocol, or have you done others in the past? And just curious what that looks like and how that informs your operation.
I mean, Andy has done lots of, we have done soil tests for 20 odd years, haven't we? So there is all of that data. But yeah, after we did our holistic management training, I think it would have been 2 years later, EOV became available and we were like, oh, fantastic, let's do that. We jumped on it straight away without a doubt because we were just fascinated for ourselves to know and to understand more about our decisions and how it affects, how ultimately how the soil is performing and how that affects the ability for wildlife to live alongside us. We're very happy to welcome all species onto this land, and that's a big part of our farming system. So we share it with wildlife as well as the humans. So yeah, I mean, I can screen share if you like. I have it on our website, which is we have 4 years of data from EOV. So I could try. Let me have a look.
Sure. Yeah. I don't know if we've done that on the podcast yet, but we'll figure out how to make it work.
Okay. There we go. Now, EOV.
In history, Bobby, we've also done lots of bird surveys on the farm. We've spoken with lots of botanical studies on the farm were done before we got here as well. So we had a baseline of what was here. And you quite often take for granted that, what is here will stay here and won't go anywhere and we won't get any more. And then we got into the EOV and yeah, it's amazing. And it's getting more interesting the more we proceed through. So we've got some figures up there. I'll let Jan explain them.
And first, just for those, I'm just going to say for those that are listening and they're not watching the video of this podcast, you've got a screenshot of your EOV dashboard showing the different data going from 2020 up through 2024 and looking at your ecological health index and, red, yellow, green, all that sort of stuff. So if folks are interested in seeing this actual data, you can jump over to the video on YouTube and you should be able to see what we're looking at there.
It's also available on our Fernhill website. I've kind of set up a page which has got a bit of the history. There's some videos, but it has got all of this data on there as well. And, that feeds very nicely into our sort of wool buying sort of industry, if you like. People that are, they want to know that their wool is coming from sheep that are regenerating landscapes. So it's available on there.
Okay, great.
So 2020, we did short-term and long-term monitoring, and that happens every 5 years. And so we will be doing, the long-term and short-term monitoring again, which is 7th, 8th and 9th of July this year. So we'll be able to update with some more data. Mm-hmm. And, it's just very interesting to see our water cycle and our mineral cycles. Obviously, we're on top of the hill. It doesn't quite turn that dry in the summer, but that's because we don't have any bare patches on our land, I think, which is a big part of our history is that we've never dropped the plough into any of these fields. Maybe once when um, it was drained, wasn't it? And initially drained before we owned it, and it was just a bit of a mess. So Andy did drop a plough into that, but and then that also helps the sort of energy flow in that we have lots of species here. We get very excitable botanists come because we've got acid and alkaline plants that grow side by side because it's got ex-industrial sort of scars all over the landscape. And we have 150 species in a kilometre square on this farm. And, that in itself is perhaps twice, if not three times, what you would find on most agricultural landscapes. So, we're just happy that there is evidence out there that can support some of this information in a format that's global. We want it to be something that anyone else can have a look at and, yes, come and get involved with it if they want to.
Yeah. So what I'm seeing from this right here is, so the data that you're presenting right here starts in 2020, and you've got it broken down by the 4 different ecosystem processes. So water cycle, mineral cycle, energy flow, which is photosynthetic capture, and then community dynamics or biodiversity and succession of species. And so in 2020, your water cycle was the strongest of the 4 different ecosystem processes, coming in at a 77%. The others a little bit lower, but it looks like year over year things have been increasing across the board. Has this information, this data, informed any of your management at all, or what have you taken away from having this information?
I think the key to myself, we've intensified our paddock grazing and been as hard as we can be on making sure we give the soil the rest it requires, the plants the rest, to the effect that if we have animals that don't fit that system, our cows, we really want them to maintain a good body condition all the year round. Those that can't fit that system, we farm out of our farm. They will go, we will sell them. It's the same policy with the sheep. So it's aided our ability to control the genetics of the flock and the herd to those that suit the system, in a system we think we're getting correct balance with these figures.
Do you have more here that you wanted to show beyond what's on this screen right here?
No, I just thought it was useful just to say, there is a dashboard for, EOV available, and there are many, many more pages available to us as the landowners.
Yes.
Each plot of land has its own set of data, its own set of photos. As I say, this is just a dashboard, it does help people understand what we're looking for, what we're monitoring, and how we're able to sort of influence, those dynamics, if you like, to create the overall index score. So I'm all done. Should I stop sharing?
Sure. Yeah. And again, we'll put the link to that part on the Fernhill website that has that EOV data. We'll put that in the show notes for folks that want to take a look in greater detail at that. So your data has been trending in the positive direction, meaning your land is getting better. The 4 ecosystem processes are improving over time as a result of your proactive land management, which I think that's the goal that we want to see in all of agriculture, hopefully, is, these positive feedback loops that are reinforcing itself to create more life where life is needed. Are you then using this EOV data and verification, since it's moving in a positive trend? Are you using this in land to market in terms of differentiating your wool in the marketplace?
Yeah, so we partner or we work with HD Wool, which, a fantastic company in the north of England. And Joe Dawson has ensured that all his staff that work with him, for him, are, trained in sort of holistic management as well. So we feel that we can communicate to them kind of on the same level, which is interesting. And they're interested in our fibres, mostly the sort of white ones, which they can turn into insulation apparel for their clothing company. So we know that there is a need for our type of fibre, with clothing brands that are actually global. So yes, it's something that, Land Market is very, very new over here in the UK. It's not particularly well known, but it's also very, very new where you are as well. So, we're thankful that it's coming along. And I think it's just a really useful way as consumers being able to trust the brand in the sourcing of those, fibres, whatever it might be, so that they can support farmers that are, walking that extra mile, doing those extra hours just to ensure that their land is sort of, regenerating.
Yeah. So the folks that you're working with that are purchasing your wool, I'm guessing that they are coming to you, one, because of your land management, that, you are practicing the gold standard of land management and you've got the results to demonstrate that your land is in fact regenerating through that EOV data. But also you guys have taken a fairly innovative approach towards the sheep breeds that you have. You've crossbred 6 different types of sheep. Is that correct?
Yeah, we call it the best of the British 6. And again, as Andy said, it's about finding an animal that suits the system. And there is quite a few rare speciality breeds amongst those 6 breeds. Renowned for being very delicate, or generally what we would say is dropping dead, which isn't very helpful. You want a sheep to, want to live and to be able to live happily in a natural scenario, which is what we're replicating, is livestock on land 24/7 in family groups doing what they do. And so because yarn is the highest sort of potential return from your wool clip, and the breeds that are doing well on our system are kind of just the type that you would want to spin into yarns. But there is 2 different types of yarn, or 3, but mostly you can create something that is a woolen spun. And then you can go a step further and create a worsted spun yarn, which obviously the British Isles are famous for the tweed, if you like, is from long fibres that are carded, and to create a very tight yarn, which would then make fabulous cloth. And so what we've been able to do with the 6 breeds is maintain natural colours. Sheep are not white. Sheep are only white because humans like to add colour to them. There is colour in most sheep breeds, somewhere like that little seed bed, of all those plants that are hiding in the soil. Genetically, there is natural colours in many sheep breeds. So we celebrate that.
Yes.
And it means that we can lengthen the fibres, so they're really strong, they're really long, they've got lots and lots of luster, so they're really silky and shiny. They've got tremendous drape, so you can create a whole range of clothing that's real strong, got loads of longevity. You can have it in your wardrobes for a very, very long time. But equally, it's soft, it's next to the skin. It ticks all of those boxes. But, for a sheep in the field, she's happy, she's grass-fed, she gets mob grazed, she's really, really prolific and, is content. It's about, relating the sheep to the wool products and then relating the sheep back to the land management system.
Could you walk us through the 6 different breeds that you've crossbred, and what are the specific qualities that you were aiming to get out of each breed?
Yeah.
Andy's going to do that because he's the sheep breeder, really.
All right.
Many years ago, when I was a lad, my parents used to show Rylands, which are a very old traditional breed from Hereford in England. I was brought up with them, and they were a down breed, so they're good, extreme muscle development, but a quite a short wool. But they were famous for supplying the cloth the Leinster monk 200-300 years ago. So that get instilled a knowledge base that wool is useful. And then I moved myself, and I started keeping Texels, which are very high meat density breed, origins from the Netherlands, from an island there. But we found the wool wasn't so good. They were a more medium sheep. They're still on really good condition, on really good grazing with surplus food. But you don't always have that. And then another ploy, I'd ended up shearing on the Shetland Isles off the north coast of Scotland. They're very hardy sheep up there. They're about 35 kilo body weight, quite small. Lovely, lovely wool. 30 of different colours and colour shades. So I brought those down to Somerset, and a lot of people were interested in the wool. But as the farming policies have changed, small sheep are no longer so viable. So we started crossing them with the Luscable breeds, namely the Teeswater, the Wensleydale, the Leicester, both the blue-faced Leicester and the English Leicester. We tried a whole multitude of other breeds, but they were the ones that gave us a little bit more scale to the sheep. Beautiful wool coming in lots of different colours. And then we also ran a Romney ram across the Shetlands. Slightly different, more of a meat breed, a lot of hardiness within that breed itself. Great converters of roughage, less fertilised type grass into good meat, good wool. So that gave us what we would call the woolen spun flock. And then we have the luster flock, which are those breeds, but rotating the sire around using the Wensleydale, Blueface, the Leicester, or the Teeswater to give that lovely luster fleece. And it gave a scale to the sheep as well. So the origins of 35 kilo the ewe has now moved to a 55 kilo ewe. The Shetland would give about a kilo of wool. These sheep are now giving 2.5-3 kilos of wool. So the actual yield per job, per livestock unit has increased.
Wow, that's impressive. So not only are you able to increase the productivity of the land, the wool production per animal is going up, and also the quality of that wool has been improved because of the crossbreeding that you've done.
We're
What?
also very hard on our culling. Anything that is not of the correct wool quality. In a lot of breeds in the UK, you will get hemp hair, much coarser hair, which you don't want next to your skin. Like whiskers. You don't want them next to your skin. It'll make you itch a little bit.
Yeah.
And that is what has given wool in the past a bad name. So we've specifically not kept them in the flock. So every fleece, when it comes off the sheep, is inspected.
Mm-hmm.
And if the sheep is carrying hemp hair, especially if it's a ram, you get rid of them. So we're very strong on our selection of what actually stays in the flock to maintain as high a level of not only welfare for itself, good feed, good attitudes, good converters of forage, but they carry good quality wool as well.
Yeah, from an economic point of view as well, I hope there's not many sheep shearers listening, but you pay per sheep. So if they're only cutting 1 kilo of wool, now they have to cut 3 kilos of wool for the same amount of money. So it's a scale system as well. Processing wool is it is an economy of scale.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned working with HD Wool with Joe Dawson over there in terms of that being one throughput for your wool. Are there other markets that your wool is going into?
Yeah, so the Fernhill Fibre enterprise is kind of like a sister business to Fernhill Farm, and there's three elements that I consider that we regularly sort of aim to achieve within that business, and one of them is education. So we take on textile students on their internships or postgraduate sort of placements where, they are learning about textiles and have never really been on a farm, and so we try and sort of infiltrate their minds into the beauty of wool. They learn to shear, they learn to braid wool, they learn to sort, and they help me sort of run the back of our fibre business, which predominantly is supplying individual fleeces to handcrafters. And, we can ship all over the world, but that's getting very, very difficult. So we generally sort of market individual fleeces all around the UK. We attend specialist wool shows where people can buy, one fleece, blade shorn, hand picked. So it's absolutely perfect. So all the fibres in that bag are, all the same length, the same strength, the same quality. And so that's led into us selling a few washed fibres, some sort of road rings and sliver that people can hand spin. We also sell some yarns and some finished clothing, hats, jumpers, socks, blankets, scarves, sheepskins, all those sorts of things. And then the third part of it is we commission yarns and felts and fabrics for other sort of artisan or small businesses, if you like, here, mostly in the southwest, because they can come here and they can meet me and Andy and they can see the sheep and they can get involved with the shearing and they have the whole story, and it's real, it's happening, it's on their doorstep, and we make it available. That's what we do. We make it easy.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it. I mean, bringing people out to experience this on the land, whether it's through the Fiber Experience event or you were saying these textile students that are coming to get that firsthand experience. I think it's really admirable the seemingly open door policy that you guys seem to have with everything that you guys are doing. Is there anything that, aside from building the house that you were mentioning, are there any pieces that you're working towards that you've got aspirations of getting to, either as it relates to land management or as it relates to the wool enterprise? Are there things that you're trying to move towards in the future?
A day off would be nice. One day off would be lovely. Retirement for Andy, or no? Yeah.
Where we'd like to get to, I'd like to get to an even more regenerative state within our farming system. I'm trying to think of how we should almost make it like a live learning place that with modern technology now, I could be anywhere in the world, and that'd be quite nice. And communicate with the person who could be mobile phone, satellite link. Should we do this? Should we do that with your experience? I go, well, what do you think? And they could just get on and do it.
Mm-hmm.
So to be able to step back and still have an environment which you are involved in and can step in and step out of would be wonderful. We have two sons, but they are 18 and 20, and they have a whole world out there to explore what they really want to do in life. Dan and myself are doing this, as we said, because we want to. And I think working with livestock on a farm and all that entails, you have to really want to do it. And if you're lucky enough to find something within that industry that really excites you as well, that's brilliant. So yeah, we'd like to be able to step back a little bit. I'd like to do more traveling. I'd like to meet more shepherds from around the world. Maybe a little bit sad to go meet more shepherds, but it's the way of life that I can relate to. And a lot of countries around the world have sheep farmers, shepherds. And there's always a story to be exchanged with them. And maybe to go and do bits later.
In terms of connecting with other shepherds, are there any specific cultures or regions of the world that you're wanting to connect with, just to kind of put that out into the ether and see who's listening?
While I was at university, my final year thesis was on nomadic rangeland sheep production in the Middle and Far East. Some of those countries are a little bit maybe too hot to travel through. I would love to go to like Mesopotamia, the Fertile Crescent, where sheep farming originated 10,000 years ago, perhaps. The gardens of Babylon were so say tended by shepherds. Some of the most beautiful scenery in the world will have sheep moving through them. As I referred earlier, world planet Earth is a beautiful place. It would be so amazing to be able to meet others who are in a similar headspace to ourselves, enjoying the landscape, getting a genuine reward by working in harmony with it. It will give courage to push on in our communications, maybe with other people who are looking to go down the regenerative farming line, holistic training. Maybe we need to have a chat to some policymakers and some politicians to just explain how to relax a little bit.
I guess on that last point about politicians and policymakers, if you had a magic wand and you could just wave it and change one policy that it is that you are up against, that's something that you face in your daily life, what would you change?
Education, teaching people that healthy food you put into your body from a healthy landscape will reduce so many problems. But as we're all very well aware of, probably people listening to this, policy is driven by big business. Holistic farming, regen farming doesn't really give a lot of money away. It creates a wonderful product, but big business will not make much money out of it. So there needs to be a reason somehow of getting them on board a little bit. And if people could eat healthy food produced by a regen policy that benefited more people in the actual headspace of thinking holistically, rather than just the dollar in the pocket, that's what I think I'd like to try and see change. It's beginning to happen in different places. All of us have just got to keep on encouraging it.
Well, I'm impressed with everything that you guys have going on. Andy, your decades of experience, Andy and Jen, both of you guys, the experience that you bring to the table, the knowledge about shepherding and wool production and everything you're doing to push the envelope and really advance what's possible. For those perhaps that are listening and don't have the depth of experience that you two do you have any parting words of advice that you'd like to leave with folks about farming or wool production or anything that is, calling you right now?
I would just say, it will evolve naturally, trust in nature. I think we're too trusting of what the tutor might say or the teacher or what we read in a textbook instead of, eyes on the landscape, eyes on the livestock. And just because it's been like that, done that way before, it doesn't make it right. It's okay to be different. It's okay to try something that you think will enhance your own situation, because every day we are still learning every day, and some days you don't get it right, but it's not the be all and end all. It's about repetition almost, like finding the groove, you know what your body is capable of. Our bodies are a tool. We're not meant to just press a button and things be done for us. We're part of a system. So yeah, just trust in yourself, I think, really.
Have goals. Don't be worried about failing. Plan. Very good at university. One lecturer that really got in my head. He said, plan, action, control. Repeat it. Study it. Look at it at all angles. And then look at other systems. Open days, peer reviews of practices. I've been fortunate enough, I've met with Joel Salatin, he's had an influence. I've read Case Ryan's book, he's had an influence. We were very fortunate. We went to Zimbabwe and met with Alan and Jodie out there, and that was amazing. So it also enhances us to have an open case policy. People come down the drive, we meet them. We're generally busy. If they want to get involved, get involved. And we just want to share to hopefully encourage people to have a go. Let's have a go.
Let's get going. Wonderful. Well, thank you guys so much. Where can folks find you online if they want to keep up with everything that you're doing and maybe perhaps buy some of your wool? Where's the best place for them to find you?
Okay, so yeah, we have two kind of websites. We have Fernhill Farm, which generally covers more information about the livestock and the events business. So that's the festivals and the accommodation and the on-farm events that we run. Fernhill Fibre is the one that's a dedicated website just for our love of wool, if you like. We have a little shop on there. There's lots of data and all the sort of events that you either host here or I travel to with my little traveling wool shop. So yeah, Fernhill Farm or Fernhill Fibre.
Wonderful. Well, we'll put those links in the show notes. And again, Andy and Jen, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules during lambing season to sit down and chat today. Really appreciate it.
Lovely to meet you, Bobby. Thank you very much, my friend.
Good luck.
Hopefully see you here next year.
I would love to. Yes, I'm going to put it on my calendar, and I will be in Europe. So yes, I think it will be easier.
We are 7 miles from Bristol International Airport, so we can come and pick you from the airport.
Good. Looking forward to it. All right. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you ever so much. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Ruminations is a production of the Savory Institute, the Savory Foundation, and Land to Market. If you like this episode, please consider leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and subscribing to our YouTube channel, where you can find video versions of all episodes, plus other content. Many thanks to Travis McNamara, who composed and performed our theme music. If you're looking for show notes, links to things mentioned in the episode, transcripts, or more, all that can be found on our website at savory.global/podcast. And last, but certainly not least, thank you to our committed and growing community of regenerating members whose monthly support allows Savory to produce this podcast and continue advancing holistic management all across the globe. If you're not yet a member, we would love to have you as part of our community. Just sign up at savory.global/member. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.